I'm Mark Maslin. I'm a Professor of Climatology here in the Geography Department at University College London. The UK government is mandated by law to reduce our emissions to net zero by 2050. The question is, why have we chosen net zero and why 2050? And this is because the international science has shown that if we are trying to keep climate change to just 1.5 degrees, we need to reduce our carbon emissions from 2020 as fast as possible. Ideally, we need globally to hit a zero carbon emissions target by 2050. And then the sting in the tail is, even if we do that, we will still have to suck carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere for the next 50 years to the end of the century to guarantee that climate change only hits 1.5 degrees. The UK government is at the front of this change because, again, we have seen that there is the hardcore science about the impacts of climate change, and the UK government is going to make sure that the UK is carbon zero by 2050. Also, what's really exciting, of course, is the UK will be chairing the Conference of the Parties, the big climate change negotiations, which will be held next year in 2020 in Glasgow. And this is a real opportunity for the UK to lead the world to solve climate change. The exciting thing about the United Kingdom and our challenge of going carbon neutral is that we can go carbon neutral much quicker than 2050. The reason being is that we're an industrial society, we are the 5th richest country in the world, and therefore to decarbonize will be much easier for us than the rest of the world. So the key challenge for the United Kingdom is to decarbonize as quick as possible, preferably by 2035, 2040, to show the rest of the world how easy it is to do and how it actually boosts our economy. If we look at government policy to actually get to net zero carbon as soon as possible, there are some key objectives we should look at. The first thing is support renewable energy in all its shape and form. Now, the really interesting thing is this has a win-win scenario, because if we have all our own energy produced by renewables, then we are less beholden on natural gas from other countries, oil from other countries, and this will increase our energy security. We can do all other things as well. Again, we need to shift to a complete electric vehicle fleet in the United Kingdom. Now, this is a very positive thing because, of course, if we have an electric fleet of vehicles, we will then have less air pollution. That means people are healthier, less people suffer from chest infections, from asthma, and therefore our health costs will go down at the same time as we're helping to save the planet. We can also look at other things like agriculture and our own diet. If people move to a more vegetarian-based diet, perhaps become flexitarian, i.e. the idea that you spend a lot of your diet you're eating vegetables, but occasionally you can have a bit of meat just to give some variety, that has a huge impact. If we look at the carbon impact of a vegetarian diet compared with a meat diet, it halves the amount of carbon in that food. If you go to a vegan diet, which is a lot harder, that actually drops it down to about 1/3 of our normal meat diet. There are other things we can do. We can also look at how we can influence agriculture and improve our agricultural production and make it more carbon neutral. For example, how do we reduce the impact of sheep and cattle on the landscape and the amount of greenhouse gases they emit? And the last thing we can do, which is really important, is of course we can start to reforest and rewild the United Kingdom. At the moment, the UK is covered by about 12% of forests. If we compare that with the average in Europe, which is about 34%, we have a lot more improvement. And if we can compare it to an island nation very similar to our own, Japan, they have about a 70% forest cover. So we can improve on our forest and our natural environment. The interesting thing is, if we went from a 12% to 16% coverage of forest in the United Kingdom, that would take out about 1/4 of our current carbon emissions out of the atmosphere. So we can do all these wonderful positive things which will make Britain a better economy, larger economy, a better place to live, a healthier place to live, all by dealing with climate change and helping to save the world. Many people argue that the United Kingdom has already done a huge amount to reduce our carbon emissions. We have cut from 1990 levels our carbon emissions by about 47%, which sounds huge, except a lot of that has been done because we have shifted from a coal-based economy to natural gas. And again, natural gas and burning of natural gas is much more efficient in terms of energy production to carbon emissions than coal. So we've done lots of little things that have changed our economy. We've also outsourced a lot of our industrial production to developing countries. So what we're doing is we're passing on the production costs and the carbon emissions to other countries around the world, whereas actually our own emissions have actually dropped. However, we need to be much more ambitious because again, we need to reduce that 53% that's left down to zero as quick as possible. And again, we can do it because we have some of the best brains in the world, we have a really dynamic economy, we have incredible forward-thinking policies, and therefore it is easily possible to get to a carbon-neutral country by 2035 or 2040, which is a good 10 to 15 years ahead of the rest of the world. Because remember, to keep to 1.5 degrees, the whole world has to be at zero, not just some of the rich countries. So again, we have to do things faster, quicker and better than other countries in the world so we can export our know-how, our green economy and all our technology to other countries to help them reduce their carbon emissions as quick as possible. We have a great opportunity ahead of us in the United Kingdom because we have a new government who will be in power for up to 5 years and they will be able to develop long-term policies on climate change. Now, the first thing to remember is, at the moment, the global green economy is worth over $8 trillion a year and is growing at a phenomenal rate. So if you want to have strong economic growth in any country in the world, you need to invest in the green economy as soon as possible. We know that the green economy employs about 10 times the number of people than fossil fuel industry. And that's a really interesting shift in our understanding. We also need some real policies to make sure that we support our renewable sector, make sure we develop new technology that can be exported. We need to think about how we actually have agriculture and how we support our farmers in this country. We also need to think about human health and how we can actually support people to have healthier lifestyles, make sure they eat more vegetable-based diets to ensure that they avoid some of the most avoidable diseases such as heart attacks, strokes, colon cancers, and many other diseases which are related to our diet. We can also think about how we can actually improve air pollution by moving to electric vehicles away from petrol and diesel. So all these positive things will actually help us on the road to net zero. And again, the United Kingdom could be the leading economy in the world to go carbon neutral and show how we can do it, so can everybody else, but hopefully with our know-how and our technology.